Parks Canada is finding new and creative ways to waste Canadians' money every single day. This time they're paying a New Zealand-based company nearly $6 million to go on the hunt of a lifetime off the coast of British Columbia. The Sitka black-tailed deer were introduced to Haida Gwaii for hunting in 1898-ish. But because there are no natural predators for these little tiny ruminants in the island chain formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands, they just sort of took the place over. They quickly overpopulated and became a problem, eating up much of the natural vegetation that the indigenous animals to the island rely on. They're like rats, I guess, but you know, delicious. And because much of Haida Gwaii is a national preserve, the solution to the infestation of destructive deer was left up to the big thinkers in Environment Minister Catherine McKenna's office. Parks Canada hired 5 New Zealanders who specialize in deer eradication to shoot the deer from low-flying helicopters. The Kiwis also use tracking dogs to hunt the deer on land and boats to shoot them from the shoreline. The good news is the venison from the deer cull is being distributed to the residents of Haida Gwaii. So you know what? Good job on that. Now the cost of this helicopter hunt, which actually sounds really pretty fun, is $5.7 million, courtesy of the Canadian taxpayer. These lucky Kiwis are getting a pretty sweet heli hunt and all the deer they can shoot, and they're getting paid for it when the rest of us would, of course, pay handsomely out of pocket for such an incredible adventure. Now I'm going to read to you 2 statements from a Vancouver Sun article. The first one is from Robin Irvine, a project manager from Parks Canada. She said, "Although we have a lot of great local hunters, we wanted people who are eradication specialists. The deaths of these animals were as humane and quick as possible." Right. Okay. These foreign hunters who are completely unfamiliar with the Canadian terrain and unfamiliar with the deer species itself are specialists, according to Parks Canada. Specialists rather than the locals who have been hunting these deer for, you know, generations. Sure thing. I'm sure these Kiwis, don't get me wrong, are highly skilled in doing what they do. But I thought this was the government who cares deeply about local Indigenous knowledge above all else, including science sometimes. And this is the second statement. It's from Sarah Dubois from the SPCA. She said, "I was blown away at how professional it was. They would take only headshots, no body shots, and only if they could guarantee an instant kill." Now, both of those above statements presume that Canadian hunters normally cause undue suffering to an animal. We're not humane. That's crazy. No Canadian hunter wants to see an animal suffer before it dies. And that's why we don't take our hunting advice about where the appropriate kill shot would be from the animal rights types at the SPCA. When you're hunting deer, you're actually advised not to use the head as a kill zone because it is far too easy to wound an animal and cause the animal undue suffering. It's an ineffective way to put an animal down. No hunter who wants to eat the meat aims for the body outside of the heart and lungs. Headshots are considered professional, though, to the SPCA's chief scientific officer. Please, everyone, do not take your hunting advice from the SPCA. I also read in that same Vancouver Sun article that the Kiwis were using a Remington 223 to kill the deer, which is not something most Canadian hunters would dream of using to kill large game. That's really more of a varmint rifle, but from what I understand, these deer are pretty small. Now, last year, Parks Canada had a much better plan to deal with the deer in place. Professional marksmen were going to come in and train the local young people to assist in the deer cull, teaching these young people valuable hunting skills to be able to feed themselves and their families low-cost, local, high-quality protein. The deer cull back then was also going to be a windfall for local school hot lunch programs. But since then, the government has changed lanes and decided to contract the deer cull out to another country altogether. Now, there are other Canadian examples of how to deal with a highly adaptive invasive species. In Alberta, we had a little bit of a wild boar incursion for quite some time. The province offered an ongoing bounty on the hogs at $50 a head. and it resulted in about 1,000 boars being culled at a very low cost to the taxpayer. Now that boar program has just wrapped up because people weren't bringing any more boars for bounty. And the locals say that's because the boars really aren't around anymore. What I'm saying is, hunters, if you give them a financial incentive, will take care of these problems. There are no New Zealanders and helicopters necessary. The federal government could have easily opened up the national park to hunting and then relaxed the hunting regulations everywhere else in Haida Gwaii that the deer are a problem, dropping the tag limit from 15 deer per year with a max of 5 deer at a time to unlimited as long as the meat isn't allowed to spoil. The government should be encouraging Canadian hunters across the country to come in and solve this problem, to spend their hunting dollars locally in Haida Gwaii, solving this deer issue while also helping the local economy. Instead, the federal government is now spending nearly $6 million to pay a foreign company to do what many Canadians would gladly do for them for free. Because for the federal government, actually for all levels of government, the answer is never fewer regulations, more freedom, and local solutions. The answer, unfortunately, is always to spend more of our money. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunry. Join me for the biggest anti-carbon tax rallies we've ever planned. Saturday, April 14th from 1 to 3 at the Alberta Legislature, and then again Sunday, April 15th from 1 to 3 at Calgary City Hall. We've already got great speakers lined up. It's a free, family-friendly event. For more details, go to repealthecarbontax.com.